and welcome to the OutLoud podcast. Today, my guest is Daniela Blanco. Daniela is the co-founder of Sunthetics, and I'll let you tell everybody what that's about, but appears in the Disney Plus National Geographic movie, Own the Room, which was an incredible, incredible film about student entrepreneurs and brilliant entrepreneurs like Daniela, and it's just an amazing thing, so everybody watch that. But first of all, thanks, Daniela, for doing this.
Hi, Will. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting for me. As you said, I am the co-founder of Sunthetics, and at Sunthetics, we have one vision, which is to make the chemical industry more sustainable.
Okay.
At this point, we do that by developing machine learning platforms that help the chemical companies develop sustainable processes up to 5 times faster. That means using up to 5 times less raw material, less energy, and producing up to 5 times less emissions.
Amazing. Yeah, it's such an amazing idea, and it's something that really, you look at companies that have an impact on the planet, and yours just seems to tackle such a massive problem and make such a massive change. And I think that's probably why, along with many reasons why you won and why you did so well and represented the United States at this global student entrepreneur awards competition, but also because of you and your personality. So to me, it's the marriage of an amazing business idea with a huge amount of impact, but also a great founder and a great representative of the company. So I want to unpack kind of both those things. I'm usually more interested in the founder than in the idea. My contention is, if ideas are not really worth much. Anybody can have an idea. If you can't execute upon it, then there's no business, there's no investors, there's nothing, right? And there's no audience, there's no sustainable financial project. So you have to have a founder that is smart enough and hardworking enough and charismatic enough to carry that vision forward. So yeah, let's talk about you first, and then we'll get into more of like how you got here, why you decided to do this. So you're originally from Venezuela, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So can you tell me about what that was like and how long you spent there and what it was like growing up there?
Yes, I was born and raised in Venezuela. I only came to the US after I finished my undergrad, so I came straight for the PhD. And Venezuela, I think, it's who I am, to be honest. Like my values, my personality, like the way that we're grateful for things, that we focus on the good things, and that we always look forward, try not to look backwards. That comes from our culture and our society. So I have brought that with me. I think that something very key, though, is that Venezuela is going through a lot of political, economic challenges in our country that have forced a lot of us to leave. So it has a component that's very emotional. And then you come as an immigrant to a different country where you feel like you were forced to build a new life. Right. It can be very scary. But at the same time, I think it shows you that you are strong enough to do that. And I think that put me in a better position to also be an entrepreneur, because then building a company kind of doesn't sound so scary when you build a new life without knowing how to do that, right?
Right. And I think there is a study that the reason that so many immigrants are able to build these amazing companies and is because there is something about, I think, 2 things that a study kind of identified. One is there's an incredible amount of resilience that it takes to go to a new country, build a new life, learn a new language. For some people they have to do that, for others not. But basically, yeah, learn a whole new set of customs and cultures and language and everything from how to go to the bank to how to get a cup of coffee. And then that resilience, as you said, creates like the sense of, well, if I can do this, I can maybe do some other potentially really scary things. But then the other thing is there's a risk-taking factor there.
Correct.
Right? So what was that like when you made the decision? Because in the film you said like you basically didn't feel safe anymore. I think that was what you said. So when did that become clear? And was it still a really difficult decision? I'm sure it was, but like, was it still like, oh, maybe I can stay here because going would be worse? But what was that moment where you felt like, okay, I have to leave?
Venezuela was going through a lot of protests, because of everything that was happening in the country. And then like they started just attacking the students. It was attacking anyone who was out there saying anything. As a student, like I remember we had to go to school, and then we had to like put our backpacks on the trunk of the car so that nobody would see that you were a student and that you were trying to get to school to take your class.
Wow.
And that makes you feel extremely unsafe.
Sure.
So at that point, that's when I felt that if I didn't have the well-being that I was looking for, then how could I build the career that I was expecting to build? I
Mm,
felt like I needed to be okay on my own so that I could really build my professional career. And I mean, on top of that, to be honest, you have to also add that even the chemical companies in Venezuela have, of course, been affected by all the economic challenges that we have had
right.
to face. So it just felt like the environment wasn't right for me to be able to have the resources that I needed to push these ideas forward.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it must have been a really tough decision, but obviously a successful one, and something that allowed you to go and build something really amazingly. So, you know, that thing of resilience, and that thing of like coming from a really difficult situation, making difficult choices, and then coming through it, surviving, and actually thriving, which is quite amazing. So you get to New York, right? You moved to New York City.
Correct.
And you went to, what was the name of the school you
NYU.
went to? NYU for chemical engineering, correct?
Correct.
Amazing. What is, okay, to somebody who's not in the engineering or the chemical engineering world, um, that seems to me like magic and wizardry. It's so far out of my realm of understanding of like how difficult, how crazy is the kind of work that you're doing there? How difficult is the coursework and the kind of stuff that you would do there?
Well, chemical engineering is honestly a lot of fun. There are so many different things that you can do within this field. If you think about it, I mean, chemical engineers, right? Like we build the chemical industry, and then the chemical industry makes pretty much everything around us, all the way from our clothes, the components on our phones, our desks, our computers. All of that is made by the chemical industry. So you can work in either, making those new products. You can work on making new materials. You can also work on just how do we recycle them, how do we reuse them in a more efficient way, how do we use better the natural resources, how do we use better energy sources. There are so many things that you can work in.
Right.
I personally, my passion now is kind of bringing together the AI world and the chemical industry world
Hmm.
so that we can kind of like leverage the strengths from both of them and then develop the more sustainable processes that we need in the future.
Right. So, but in your PhD program, you weren't studying AI, correct? You were studying chemical engineering. So, how did you get interested in AI?
Well, because I realized that chemical engineering, when it comes to developing a new process, is freaking difficult. And I
Huh,
realized that we needed AI.
right.
Let me put it like this. So, the idea, right, in chemical engineering is that you're constantly coming up with recipes. Like you need, for example, to make the materials for this shirt.
Hmm.
But then it needs to be very specific. It needs to be strong enough. It needs to have the exact color. It needs to be the perfect material. So to come up with that, then you need to figure out what kind of reactor do I need, what reactants, what concentrations, what temperatures. And it's literally like coming up with a recipe.
Mm,
In the chemical industry, what we normally do is that we just run hundreds of experiments. So you can imagine if you want to come up with a recipe for a souffle, then you run 100 different recipes, and then you just keep putting it in the oven, taking it out, tasting it. No, it didn't work. And then you go
right.
again, and you go back and forth. What I want to do is use AI to help accelerate that process. We run
Right.
only, let's say, 2, 3 recipes, and then the AI gives you a complete recommendation of step by step what you should be doing to get to that material that you're looking for much faster.
So the AI streamlines the experimentation process, and that's where the sustainability comes from, right? By doing less experiments, you save on what materials, pollutants. Is that part of it? Do you pollute when you
Yes.
experiment?
Yes, because normally by doing that, I mean, by having to run more experiments, you're constantly having emissions.
Right.
And then as we get to a more sustainable, the AI also helps us find a material under the best possible conditions. So the process that ends up going to manufacturing is one that is as efficient as possible. So you're also saving on emissions and pollution and all of that.
Wow. It's so brilliant. I mean, I just think, yeah, I think the idea is so incredible, and you know, a way to make to use AI to make, like, there are probably a lot of old players in the chemical industry, I would imagine. And one thing you hear a lot about in industries with old players, like not, high tech stuff, but in old industries, there's an old way of thinking, and people are like, oh, we've done it this way for so long, so it's fine. And they don't have that same sense of like, how can we revolutionize this or radically shift it? And especially maybe, they haven't typically cared about the environment as much. So yeah, so I'd love to also make that connection. um, what was it? Was it that you were first concerned about the environment and are like, I need to find a way to make this more sustainable? Or did that kind of come about by the work that you were interested in AI? What is your kind of, I guess, relationship to that and sustainability, and how big is that for you?
Yes, so being from Venezuela, Venezuela pretty much completely depends on the oil industry.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I decided to become a chemical engineer, and my dream was really to contribute, right, to the growth of my country and be able to be part of that industry. Now, when I was doing my internship in undergrad, I realized that as much as I absolutely admire what has been built of the chemical industry because it's so incredible, but it didn't have the sustainability push that I was looking for. I wanted more drive there. I wanted to see more initiatives taking place. And because I felt like it wasn't, the right place for me, then I was like, okay, then what I want to do is that I want to work to make that the right place for me and for other engineers.
Right.
So I decided to come and do my PhD to learn about how to develop more sustainable technologies.
Okay.
I started the PhD just looking into solar powered chemicals. And then I realized that solar powered, I mean, I still want to do that and I'm still working for it. But the thing is that developing one solar powered process at a time just takes a lot of money and a lot of time. And then instead of doing that on my own, with this platform, I can offer it to companies so that they can develop those solar powered processes. And then I multiply the impact because everyone can just do it on their own.
Right. You're creating something that will help do what you want to do for everyone. Is what it sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
which is great. And when you talk about scaling and yeah, making something that multiplies, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a bit about the movie now. And again, I can't really recommend this movie enough. It's just so inspiring. When I saw the trailer, so I know Adrienne Palmer. That's how we got connected. And Adrienne is the best, and she,
Amazing.
yeah, I love her so much. And her husband Peter. I don't know if you met him as well,
Yes.
but
They're
yeah.
both
So
incredible.
every time I've been to Dallas to work, I've seen them and hung out with them, and they've hung out with them in Toronto, and they're just like the loveliest people, and have been huge mentors to me as an entrepreneur, teaching me what they know and about business and about just so many things. And so Adrienne posted this trailer to LinkedIn, and I was just scrolling through LinkedIn, and I saw this this great trailer for a documentary, which I'm always interested, but then it's like, this is about entrepreneurship. And for me, seeing that, I'm like, we don't have anything like that for entrepreneurs. There's no kind of, oh, there's this entrepreneurship documentary, and then there's this there really is not a lot about that. Sometimes people will focus on an individual entrepreneur, but not about just like, what is the process by which young people have an idea, and then where do they go from there? Like,
Yeah.
that is such a cool thing to start to have. And so when I saw the trailer, I was hooked. And then I saw you, and I saw Henry, and I saw some of the others who I've also had the pleasure of talking to. And you guys were just so joyous and hopeful and emotionally connected with what you were doing, and passionate and smart. It was so incredible to see, and it got me like so excited. And so, yeah, tell me what the process tell me how did you get connected with it, selected to do the movie? Was it just because you were involved in the student awards? Yeah, just, and for people who don't know, tell us a bit about the Global Student Entrepreneurship Awards, please.
Of course, of course. So the Global Student Entrepreneur Awards is a competition that is organized by the Entrepreneurs Organization. They are incredibly special, including, of course, Adrienne and Peter.
Yeah.
But I think that what's so special about them is that they recognize that a business is more than just the business. It's the people that are building it, right? It is what you were saying at first. Like, the idea might have some value, but the real value comes from whoever is fighting for that to become a reality.
Right.
And they recognize that. And then they have this competition where they have a student entrepreneur. So you have to be, taking classes and at the same time trying to start a business. And you talk not only about, your business, your revenue, your business model, all of those things, but you also talk about your story and, how you came here. You open up and you're vulnerable. And I signed up for the competition, when I was at NYU. So I went to the original competition in New York. To be honest, not even really knowing what it was about.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a scientist too, so I'm not used to being asked about my personal life. Like, nobody normally wants to know about it. They just want the numbers behind
What's
me.
the science? Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So, it was a challenge, to like understand that this room full of strangers at a time, right, are asking me incredibly personal questions, and they're expecting me to be so vulnerable and honest
Right.
about everything that's happening to me. I'm glad I was able to, to still like go up to the challenge. I won the regional competition and I went to Denver for the national competition. When I was there, they started filming. There was a crew that was filming everything, but they never told us that it was supposed to be a documentary.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
So you didn't think beforehand that this is going to go out and be like a national packaged film. You're just like, oh, they're filming it for, their own records or for some social media content or something. But
Exactly. Like, to
yeah,
be completely honest, I mean, they looked so professional. The crew was incredible. They're so amazing. But I mean, I guess I didn't know, right? Like, this just sounded like something that, I don't know, like, how could this happen? So I guess in my head, what I was thinking is more like, my mom's gonna love it when they put that video together and she can watch
yeah,
it. Like, I really had no idea. I know that the directors, they had interviews with the students from other countries that were also part of the competition to see which stories that we're gonna follow. I didn't get interviewed because they just went to the national competition in the US. And then when I won it, they just picked me as one of the candidates that they would follow.
right.
So that's when they started coming to New York, getting to know more about my life, how I prepared for the global competition and everything.
Yeah.
And I think it was extremely special. I mean, I feel so blessed that they were able to capture so many things happening at that competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating to watch, and like the moments of tension that you feel before people step on stage and stuff. It's like I can feel it, the visceral, vicarious feeling of like the breath getting caught and the stomach butterflies, and the work that they did to capture that feeling is so amazing. And you said some really great things that I want to step on is that I want to mention, which were, one thing was, even though I'm shaking inside, they can't tell. The audience can't tell. So talk a bit about that. Like, how, first of all, I'm really interested in stage fright and anxiety because of the work I do as a speaking coach, right? I believe that stage fright comes from our evolutionary um, life or death instinct, where we stand up in front of our tribe, and if we say something wrong, then we could get, outcast, or we could lose status. It could be really detrimental to our survival to be a bad public speaker. But of course, nowadays, the worst thing that's going to happen is people just might not buy into your idea, or you might lose the competition. But of course, that also feels like life and death. And especially for you, as I think it was your co-founder who said, you know, this is like almost life or death for you. The success of this company means so much for you to be able to support your mom and your family, and support yourself, and the immigration issues that were on the hook for, whether or not your company was successful, all that kind of stuff. How do you manage that high stakes of a situation from a nerves perspective? What did you do to calm yourself down, and how bad were your nerves?
Yeah, I was really nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, there was so much at stake. Like, I believe in this company, but, as an immigrant, as a student, like, if I decided to do this company after graduation, which I did, right, it was a huge risk. I mean, I don't have a network of friends and family who can just like continue putting money, or, like
Yeah.
give me money to live. Like, my livelihood is in the company. So
Yeah.
it needs to succeed. And there's so much at stake that it makes you really nervous. I I will say I learned that when I was in high school. A friend of mine, when I was going to like my first like model UN for high schoolers, and I remember, I was very nervous. I had to speak, and my hands were like starting to sweat. I was so nervous, and he told me that he was like, like when they call your name, like you stand up and you go there and you take your time to, like fix your dress, like you take your time, because nobody needs to know that you're nervous.
Yeah.
And when you stand over there, it's up to you what they get to tell. And I remember that, and it's true. Every time now I go into a room, I remind myself of that. I swear, I say it in my head. It's like, nobody needs to know that I'm nervous if
Yeah.
I don't let them know it.
Right.
So I walk in with as much confidence as I can. And then that confidence honestly comes, I would say, from two things. One of them is that I like to really prepare myself. I'm very hardworking. So I do as much as I can in advance. I make sure that I like my slides. I make sure that I have prepared for, for the transitions, that I know what I'm going to say. And that gives me calm and confidence, because then when I walk in, I know that I did my best, and whatever
Yeah.
happens, there's no regrets. You know, I did everything that was in my hands so that today's presentation is great. That really gives me peace. And then the other thing that I repeat to myself when I don't feel confident is that everyone in that audience is really giving me a gift, the gift of their time, right? Because they could be doing something completely different, but they're spending 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes of their time just listening to what I have to say. And then my words have so much power at that moment, right? Because everyone is just listening to you, and you can do so much with what you're saying,
Yeah.
that I want to make that time be absolutely worth it. So I remind myself that, you know, this is my moment, this is a gift, and then I'm going to use it as best as I can. If I just become a nerve wrack and I can't do anything, then I'm doing a disservice to everyone, right? So let me just have fun with it, enjoy it, be sure that I did my best, and then that's how I walk into the stage.
Right. That's awesome. And I really I really, the first point about preparation giving you confidence, it's so true. Like there's nothing worse from my background as an actor. There's nothing worse than than being backstage on opening night and being like, I didn't do as much work as I should have, and just being like, fuck, you know, and like reminding yourself, you know, about all those moments where you chose to watch TV instead of working on your lines. But when you have prepared, and you feel good, it really can get you through some really intense nerves. I have a really intense stage fright. I still perform in theater now and then. I still perform in music sometimes, and even more recently. And I still do lots of public speaking for the work that I do with OutLoud. And I always get stage fright. I get nervous. I get the sweaty hands. I get shortness of breath. I get butterflies in my stomach, and my brain, my face gets hot, and my brain gets slow and muddled. But the preparation really does get you through. And then the second point you made about the audience giving you a gift and it being a moment, I'm really interested in this thing, because a lot of time I feel like pressure makes some people perform really well. Some people know that this is their moment and they rise to that occasion, and it really brings out the best of them. But for other people, pressure makes them completely collapse, and it makes them just go like, oh my God, I can't do this. And, you know, so that second point about the audience giving you a gift is, do you ever feel that sometimes you actually do better to lower the stakes? Because you said just have fun with it, you know, just try to enjoy it. How do you feel about do you ever try to psych yourself out and tell you this presentation or this pitch is actually not so important, there will be others? Do you ever go through that kind of thought process, or does the pressure of like, this is my moment, does that actually bring you to where you need to be?
So to be honest, I don't tell myself kind of like, you know, like there will be others, and like, you know, like this is not that big, because then I feel like it will probably make me like relax too much. You know, like I come in
Too
with my
much.
A game because I know that this is important type
I
of thing.
see. Yeah.
What I do tell myself though, that could be similar to that, is that, you know, I have this thing that I repeat, and it's that the worst thing that can happen is that you learn something. You know, like if this is a competition, I treat it as a great big opportunity, important moment of my life. If something doesn't go right, if the judges don't like it, if I don't know how to answer a question, you know what? So what's the problem? I learned something that I need to think more of. I learned something that affects me in a way that I didn't know. You know, and then I take that learning with me. Every competition, every pitch that I have done has always been with that mindset.
Right.
Losing is not really losing. It's just learning something.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I mean, is like to look at a moment as like, I either succeed or I fail, can create a lot of nerves and anxiety. So to say that, you know, this is my moment, and if I don't answer a question properly, or if I do forget what I'm going to say, or if a slide doesn't work, or whatever, you know, can go wrong, then that's a failure, and then I've screwed it up. That to me is the pressure that I find very unhelpful for a lot of
Yeah,
people, and the negative
I
thoughts
agree.
of putting too much at stake. So, you know, one thing I always say is like, lower the stakes. And I know that for some people, maybe that gets them too relaxed. But for me, and this is, I think I'm different slightly with you, in all these moments where I've put pressure on myself, I have failed. In every moment where I'm like, I need to like knock this out of the park. And slowly for me, the learning has been, how can I make this just matter a bit less in my mind? Just not be so life and death, not be so like it's either a failure or a success. But that's very similar to what you're talking about. I think about worst thing that can happen is that I learn something. I love the way of phrasing it like that. That's really great. Okay, so you win the regional competition in New York, and then you win the national competition in Denver, and then once you win, the camera crew starts filming you. Was it difficult to open up to them and talk about your life? I know there was a really emotional moment that you have kind of early on in the movie, like, and you were talking about that EO Entrepreneurs Organization that runs this awards. EO expects you to be very vulnerable, so you're talking to these judges. How tough is it, I guess, in general for you as a person to open up about emotional issues and how they relate to your business? Is that something that comes easy or doesn't to you?
I don't think it came easy at first. As I said, I wasn't used to it. And it's just, it's weird, right? Because you are going to stand on stage and then just talk about so many challenges and problems and vulnerabilities. Like, it just feels like, am I just, attacking myself up here? And, and everyone is just nodding like it's something good.
Right.
But I think that what this competition really taught me is how powerful that is. Now I am incredibly grateful and blessed that I went through that, because I think that by being able to open up and show all of these things, my story is now out there. And the story of all of these students is out there, showing everyone else that, you know, when a company succeeds, like sometimes we tend to look at those stories of success and it just seems kind of unreachable. It seems like this person, somehow they managed, and it seems
Yeah.
like the genius that we're not. And then it's like, I'm never going to get there.
Right.
But instead, when you now listen to the students as they're going through these things, and you see how they're building their companies, and you see how many challenges they're having in their personal lives, in their countries, in with their families, they have so many things going on and they're still pushing forward, that then it starts feeling like I can do it too.
Right.
And I love that. I love that. I think this documentary shows that. It shows
Yeah.
that success story that you hear about someone, there's probably so much behind it that we never find out about.
And that you would relate to so much as an entrepreneur or a person if you found it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then, why is it that in life and in science and everywhere, like, we're so worried with making it look like we don't make mistakes and just telling the success of what we did and,
Mhm.
just saying kind of like giving the silver lining of everything, when sometimes the other part is what's the most real. And that's the part that people can get behind because they understand and they relate to. I think that it really taught me a lot. It taught me about how when you are that honest, then you get the right people in your corner, because
Right.
then people believe in you. They know what you're really going through. And those who stand behind you is because they get you and they're going to get you there. So
Right.
I am incredibly grateful. I mean, thankfully, the crew, Christina, Darren, Peter, everyone, they were so nice and so patient that, they would ask these questions, but they made a great job of, being so friendly and so kind
Mm.
that it was very easy to open up to them.
Right. I guess that is a real skill probably of a documentary filmmaker, is like, how do you get your subjects in the right place where they can truly show their emotions? And of course, that is what we love, I think, about documentaries so much, is especially people focused documentaries, is like being able to see a story from a really real human point of view, like not scripted, not molded in any single way, and just watching human beings actually go through ups and downs and emotional rides. And that's, when I talk about storytelling from a business perspective, I say, entrepreneurs so often will shy away from what makes their story so interesting. And you ask sort of like, why do we do that? And I think that it is really interesting. Part of the reason is people go, well, who am I? Who cares about me? Like, let's
Yeah.
talk about the business. Let's talk about the thing that we're here to talk about. But you can't really separate your business or your ability to carry that business through without getting your story out there. I really believe it. Like, you can't just be like, I'm just a voice saying an idea and that exists separately from me. It doesn't. It
Yeah.
is who you are, what you've been through, what you believe in, what you stand for, how you communicate. All of that is an indication of the success of your business and who will get behind it. And so um I mean, that's what drew me to you and to the other students, is like knowing something about you. I always think about it as like, when you have a friend, you can think of them like a file folder in your head. How many siblings do they have? Where are they from? What are their parents like? What are their parents' names? Do they have any pets? What do they do for a living? Where do they go to school? For your best friends, you have all that in your head, right? And it breeds familiarity and trust and friendship, a feeling of familiarity and friendship. And if you have that for a figure that you've never even met, it simulates that feeling of friendship. Like I felt like I was friends with you before I even met you, in that weird way of people that you see, whose stories you see on television. You're like, oh, I feel like I know this person. And then you, of course, you have none of that for me. So until we start talking, right? So there's that imbalance. But then if I'm doing my job right, or if I'm, representing myself right, then I reciprocate and I open up to you and I say, this is who I am. This is what I've been through. And I just, it's so important, I think, for entrepreneurs to own their story and figure out, what is it that really got you here? What is it that you really struggled with? And talk about your emotions, talk about your emotional life, not just, well, I went to school here and then I did this. Like, what have you been through and what do you believe in and what do you really care about that got you here? When you're on stage, do you find it harder to open up on stage or on camera, or how does that feel to you, or just to talk in general? What do you find more difficult, camera or stage?
I think camera, because camera also has that, that this is going to stay there, and like they might like replay this and replay.
Yeah, that's right. It exists forever, and it could be viewed by the amount of people that could watch it, and therefore the percentage of people who are going to hate it or judge it goes up exponentially.
I mean, from now on, I guess my advice to people is like, watch out. You never know when the video is going to go on Disney Plus. So
yes. Yeah. And that's so interesting too, that you didn't know they were making a Disney Plus documentary. And I wonder how that would have changed your delivery if you knew this is going on a Disney documentary. Like, do you think that would have affected the way you represented yourself, or do you think you would have just done the same?
I don't think it would have actually changed it. Like, I think maybe I would have been more nervous. But as I say, I just feel like eventually the crew was so nice when they were filming that I just felt like I was talking to my friends as well, to people that I knew. So they really made a good job at making you feel so comfortable that I do think the emotions and everything would have come out the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so how has it been since then? How has that movie, I guess, and that experience launched you into where you are now? And tell us a bit about what that aftermath is like, and then how it's gotten you to today.
Yes. So, I mean, since we filmed the documentary, the company grew a lot. We didn't just pilot to go into the AI for the chemical industry, pivot to go into the AI for the chemical industry. But we also, we raised more money. We were part of Techstars. We won many recognitions, including Forbes, from MIT Technology Review and Inc. Magazine, and many others.
Sorry, I just want to ask you about Techstars, if you don't mind me interrupting for.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay. Which Techstars did you do?
I was a part of the program with the Heritage Group. It was in Indiana.
Okay, cool. And what was that experience like? Because I've worked with Techstars Toronto and Techstars Space and Allied a couple times, and I really love what they do. But I'm curious to know from somebody who's been through it, what was that accelerator program like for you?
The accelerator was really incredible for us for two main things. They supported, I would say, equally our business and also technical efforts. By working with the Heritage Group, we had actually access to their lab, part of their personnel. We were able to run reactions there and do our first trial projects, like in the laboratories of the Heritage Group. So that was incredible for our technical development. And on the other side, for the business, they really supported our efforts for that. I mean, we were just closing on like convertible notes with angel investors, but it was still kind of like our first time raising money like that, because before that it had only been grants and competitions in non-dilutive funds.
Right.
So they were instrumental in helping us get through that, understand everything. It really felt like we had the support that we needed on every aspect of the business.
Awesome. And would you recommend to other entrepreneurs, especially tech entrepreneurs, to go and do a program like that? Because I get asked this question a lot, like, should I go to an accelerator or should I do it, by myself? What would you say to that?
I think accelerators are great, but if you're at the right stage for them. So I would just say, before going into anything like that, just make sure that the accelerator offers enough to bring you, enough value. And then, that you're at the right stage for it. Because as I said, if I was just at the kind of like just still trying to prove a concept and I couldn't be doing experiments or validating in a lab, then I don't think it would have been as useful for us, because then the
Right.
whole heritage group side wouldn't have brought any value. And I mean, if for example, if you're still just doing a lot of competitions and you have very little need for funding, then maybe their support with fundraising is not that instrumental for you. But if
Right.
if you I would say just make sure that you understand your needs, where you want to get, kind of like on the time frame that the accelerator would have, and then see how much they can help you. If they can actually bring value to that, then I think it's a wonderful move.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, thanks. And then, so sorry to interrupt. So you went and did Techstars, and then you started getting recognized. So what was the process by which you got recognized by Forbes and MIT? Did you have to submit to competitions? Did you have to like kind of go out and chase that PR, or was that kind of, did that happen to you because of the film? How did that work? How did those recognitions come?
So it was actually through nominations in our case. For Forbes, we were nominated. And then for MIT, it was also, I was nominated when I was still a student at NYU. I was part of a competition that was organized by the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence and Opino Minds and Tech. So I was nominated to that competition. I participated there and I won it. So when I won, they nominated me for the MIT Technology Review of like top innovators under 35 and everything.
Okay, cool.
I would say that in our case, what made sense was just that, or what was really helpful is that when I was still at school, we started going through as many competitions as we could. And then if you do a good job, like, it spreads, like people start nominating you, they bring more programs to you. And then it was thanks to all of the support of that network that we were able to get these recognitions.
Awesome. Okay, great. So the recognitions come, you go through the accelerator, you advance your concept, and you get your first trial run, you start getting all these, by putting yourself out there, basically, it sounds like by going to pitch competitions, you're constantly honing your pitch, but you're also getting the word out there. And then I imagine that all that was great for growth. At that stage, was it, did you still need money to fundraise? Did you still have to do a lot of R&D, or were you ready to kind of hit the market?
So we got this money from the angel investors. We also just recently got a grant from the National Science Foundation that is also supporting a lot of our technical development. We have been able, thank you. We have been able to work with that up to now. We are actually, however, doing a pre-seed round. It's going to be probably like August of 2021. Okay. So I'm actually, getting ready to go out and, touch base again with the VC funds that we had spoken with, but we're always looking for more people. So if anyone is listening and you're interested in investing in being part of our pre-seed round, do reach out.
Cool. Well, and I do have some VCs in my network and in the audience. So hopefully they see this and are able to reach out. And if you need any help to connecting to the Toronto VC space, please do let me know, and I can do whatever I can to connect you there.
All right. Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate it.
For sure. I mean, it's for me, it's all about supporting people like you and businesses like you. That's what I think is really great too about the entrepreneurship kind of industry, if you can say that, or they like to say ecosystem or space or whatever the word is for entrepreneurs and the VCs who back them. There is a real sense, at least in Toronto and at least in through places like Techstars and EO that I've witnessed, there's a sense of mutual support that it does not exist in the other industry that I know well, which is acting. In acting, it feels very much like a zero-sum game. If you get the part, that means I didn't. And therefore we're enemies, or we're at least competitors or rivals.
Yeah.
And that's not everyone in the acting space. There's a lot of great friends of mine or theater school classmates of mine who are really supportive. They'll help each other with auditions. They'll work on each other's projects for free if they're making an indie film or something like that. But there's still a real sense of competition and cutthroatedness in the industry. What I love about what I've experienced in the entrepreneurship space is that there's so much help and mentorship and connection, and people being like, oh, do you know about this person? And they have that sense of like, I'll make this introduction for you. And it's just so great. It feels so supportive, and it makes you want to participate in that. And there's something really, really nice about that.
I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah. And how have you felt in terms of the kind of places where you've gone? Because you mentioned too in the film about feeling like, being young and being female and maybe not being taken as seriously in your industry. Has that changed? Do you still feel that way? What's that experience like?
I would say, we have come a long way. We continue building credibility through this, like recognitions, this awards that we get, and then just the results, from our tech, like people testing it, our pilot projects. There is a point where I think that for anyone who didn't believe in us and who kind of like was giving us a hard time, it just became clear that at the moment, they weren't the right fit to work with us. Like they weren't believing in what we were doing. And that was fine. Like I think that I have just made the conscious decision to then focus on the ones and bring, like the ones that believe in us, those are the ones that are in our corner. Those are the ones that we go to, and those are the ones that we recognize as real mentors.
Right.
And then, we have just focused on working really hard so that there is a point where your results, your work, your reputation speaks for you, and then at that point, we have seen more and more people started kind of like coming and then recognizing what we're doing and being much, much nicer about it. So
Right.
I am grateful that we were able to go past the initial time where it felt like nobody was going to take us seriously.
Right. And so how does that make you feel when you're in an investor pitch, let's say, when you feel the lack of respect or lack of being taken seriously from them? What tips do you have for people who may feel that way if they're in an investor pitch or a meeting? How do you deal with that feeling?
I personally like to tell myself that even though it feels personal, it's not personal. Like the fact is that they don't know you. So they might think that you don't know enough. They might think that you're saying lies or something, but they don't know you. So, whatever they're saying, don't take it personal, breathe, don't get upset because you get nothing from it. And then I personally just take it as maybe an opportunity, because sometimes it feels like they're putting the bar so low that it's kind of easy to surprise them. Right? Because then they're not expecting you to know the answers to their questions and things like that. So whenever I run into that kind of situation, I just tell myself, not worth getting upset. Let me just show, with honesty, what I am, what I know, and what I don't know. Because I mean, many, many times we have had things that we don't know. And that's the honest answer. Mm-hmm. But I think that then when, like, if you approach it that way, but you're competent in what you're doing, you will see that eventually the conversation starts changing and they realize that you actually know the answer to their questions and that maybe they were misjudging something. And from that, great relationships can continue to evolve. So don't close the door. Just don't take it personal and get them to know you. If you're good enough, then you're going to prove it.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, what I've seen at a lot of pitch competitions when I've been either in the audience or been judging or whatever is like the founders who argue, if they get criticism or if they get any kind of feedback, it's never good. It never gets you anywhere. And you can sense when they get sort of emotionally upset about being questioned or being criticized. And so I think that's a great piece of advice to not take it personally. And those who are able, also that piece about, I get asked a lot is, what do I do if I'm in an investor pitch and they ask me a question and I don't have the answer? What I have said thus far is just say, oh, I don't know, but you know what? I'll look that up and I'll get it back to you and I'll send you an email. Is that a good piece of advice in your opinion? And is there anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, no, that's what I do. I mean, I just think that the worst mistake that you can do is pretend that you know everything, because nobody knows everything. And mostly, when you're talking about things of the market, of projections, like it's assumptions, we're all doing our best, but there are so many things that we still don't know and that can change. So I am extremely honest with the things that I don't know. I'm honest in the sense that, I'm a chemical engineer. I've never heard this before, but I promise you, I'll find out. And next time we meet, I'll have an answer for you. I did that in competitions as well. I remember on our very, very first competition, we didn't know anything. We understood, I think, half of the business terms that they were saying.
Right.
And I remember them asking us some questions on like the quarterfinals. And then, they asked us one of these questions where everyone was just like, what? Look at what they're saying. And I remember just telling them, like, I honestly don't know. I remember it. So simple that the question was just, have you thought of licensing? I didn't know what licensing was.
Right.
That's how, I mean, it was my first pitch ever about the business. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what that meant. And then I remember just telling them, I don't know what licensing entails. I don't know what I would have to do for that or how it would affect the business. But I promise you that if you give me the chance for the semifinals, I'll have an answer for you on what we think about that.
That's such a great answer.
And it worked, like it's like people recognize that because it's so much better to just tell the truth. Just, don't make it look like you don't know and you don't care.
Yeah.
It's you don't know, but you will find out, because if they're bringing it up, then it's important.
And what I love about that too is you're not saying, hey, can you tell me what licensing is? You're not asking them to explain it so that you can kind of muddle through an answer. You're saying, listen, I don't know what that means. I haven't thought about this yet, but I will now that I've heard this term. And that shows a willingness to learn and an adaptability. And I mean, I think to demonstrate, as you said, nobody knows all the answers. So it's much more important to demonstrate an ability and a willingness to learn than it is to demonstrate, oh, I already know everything.
Yeah.
And yeah, nobody wants to back an entrepreneur who thinks that they know all the answers, because that is a terrible, terrible quality to have in an entrepreneur. No, I know this, Anther. We don't need to test it. We don't need to figure this out. Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, that's the kind of person who's going to lose all your money. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's so great. And I love too that thing about all by the semifinals I'll have it, which kind of implies that I'm confident that I'm going to get to the next round. So yeah, when you see me there, that's great. I really love that. So yeah, like now as it stands, when you're going into this next round of pitching, what would you say you are, what are you focusing the most about trying to communicate for your pitch? What's the essence of your story that you want investors to understand about the value that you're bringing, and how can you say that in the simplest terms, I guess? I'm interested in that, as like as a pitch coach, is boiling down your story and your value to its essence, and where does is Sunthetics at now?
So you mean like, what is it that, like, the biggest challenge that we're having right now with communicating that, or what is it that I think is the most important part to communicate?
Yes, I guess both. Like, are you having challenges, or have you got it to a really good elevator pitch where you can say, like, this is what we do? I mean, you said it at the beginning, but let's say you're meeting an investor cold for the first time at some kind of event or whatever. How do you communicate the story and the value proposition in a couple sentences?
Yeah. So I would say, probably the biggest challenge with communicating our technology is that it has so many implications and so many different storylines. Like, some people will look at it from the point of view of AI will get me better medicine, better products, and that's just a higher quality chemical industry. Some people will look at it as in this will save emissions and raw material use and energy, so this is more sustainable. Other people just look at it as in, like, this is AI taking over. This is what we need for AI in the chemical industry. And then it can be very complicated because each of those storylines has, a lot that needs to be told. And then I would say that just your pitch takes a completely different route.
Yeah.
So I think that probably the most difficult part right now is really explaining how our tool brings so much value, but then kind of like, when we don't know the profile of the person specifically, we don't know which one specifically they would want to know even more about, because sometimes they're similar, so sometimes you can't completely tell beforehand. How do we make a story that's wholesome enough to kind of like cover this and still get to those specific points or emotional points that will make the person really relate to that?
Yeah, and that's what I'm always interested in too, is like, if you have a group of investors who may all be from different industries, they may all have different types of companies that they like to invest in, but they may all be in the same room together, and just to have this kind of repeatable story. One thing I like to say is, the story should be able to be small and simple enough that it can be repeated just in varying degrees of complexity in different places. So like, for example, on a billboard, it should be 3 words or something, like, Nike, just do it, or whatever. But then when you get into an investor meeting that's 30 minutes long, it's way more detailed, but it all flows out from that big grand story, which can be kind of summed up more or less in 3 words. But it to me, it comes also to those things, and I think we talked about this when we worked together, which was the 5 things that every person cares about, or the 5 pain points, right?
Yeah.
Which are time, money, health, relationships, and emotional well-being. So what would you say Sunthetics solves? And I guess that, health is also the health of our planet, right? So yeah, what would you say is the big thing that it really, really solves? It seems to me like it solves a time problem, right? A huge time problem.
Solves a huge time problem, mostly for the people in the chemical industry. But
Yeah,
then it also works a lot on the well-being, right? For
right.
all of us, like more of the people outside it, the people who like will have a planet with less emissions and everything, but also
Yeah,
the people will get to enjoy and be able to get new medicine and new materials and new things that haven't made it to market because we need more efficient technologies.
right. So really that's the piece, is that the efficient technology brings sustainability. It brings increased well-being because of the new products it creates, and it saves a huge amount of time and money. I mean, that's like an insanely powerful pitch from my perspective. The only thing it doesn't work is like patch up your marriage or your friendships. Like other than that, it covers like everything. Which is so great. I usually say if you can get 3 out of the 5 big pain points, you're doing well, and you actually really hit 4 there. And so, yeah, what do you want people to know? If anybody listening to this right now, before we wrap up, like, what would you say to, I guess, uh, entrepreneurs who want to grow and they want to scale and they want to reach the heights that you've reached? I know you're only just getting started, which is really exciting. But you've got such amazing success so far. So, what would you say to a young entrepreneur in terms of like what you've learned and what you want them to know?
I would say, find your right balance in confidence. I mean, you never want to be underconfident or too overconfident. You want to be at the point where you're honest with who you are, where you're comfortable with what you're saying. You want to be confident enough so that, people can trust you and you show your idea and you know what you're doing. But don't ever cross to the other spectrum of being too overconfident, where then you think you know too much, you think you know everything, or you're unwilling to adapt. I think the biggest learning that I have had is that I have changed my vision is the same, right? I've always wanted a more sustainable chemical industry, but then how do I get there has changed so much as we learn from the market and as we learn
Mm,
from mentors and investors. So yeah, find the right balance and then be yourself.
great. That's fantastic. I mean, and you seem just like so much yourself, like the person you are in the documentary and the person you are when we talk one-on-one and the person we are on the podcast is all the same. And that's something that I always try to tell people is like, you never have to go into public speaking mode. I mean, you might want
Yeah,
to speak a little louder. You might want to be a little clearer and a little more, it's what I call heightened conversation. You
yeah,
want to be speaking, but you should be the same person at the bar at the after party as you are, in the taxi on the way to the pitch, as you are during the
yeah,
pitch, and as you are during the question and answer. And the more consistent you can be there, the more people will see it and go, this person is who they say they are. I trust them. I know who they are. And as you said, being yourself filters out the people. The ones who don't like it or don't get it will go on their way, and that's fine. But the ones who do,
exactly.
you'll attract them, and it'll just be such a more authentic relationship. It's really
Exactly. There is money in the world. So what you need to make sure is that you find the right people with it to be behind your idea. It doesn't, don't just pretend to be something or someone else because you need the investment.
yeah,
That would be my advice, like really make sure
fantastic.
that it's the right people. Just as they're
Right.
making sure that you're the right founder to invest in, they
Yeah.
should also be the right people to come to your corner.
Awesome. And if you had a message for any VCs watching this or any investors, what's your investor message?
Wow, I don't think I've ever been asked that. Um, I don't know. I just think I am so grateful. I am so grateful for all the support that VC funds give so many ideas. I am especially grateful for all those VCs who take it to the next level. They don't just give money, but they give mentorship. They believe in
Mm,
you. They really are invested in the idea. I think that sometimes they probably don't even realize the support and the validation that they can give us entrepreneurs when we can tell that they're 100% behind us and we can be honest with them and they like what we're doing and they believe in us.
yeah.
That that's really, they're part of the family, that of the company that we're building. So
Yeah.
I'm just very grateful.
That's awesome. And so if an investor or anyone wants to get in touch with you to talk about your idea or to get to know you better, where can they find you? We
They
can
can
put all
come.
these links under the episode anyways, but just so for people listening now.
Perfect. Yes. So they can contact us through our website on the contact form, or there's also, my direct email, Daniela at Sunthetics.io. We'll leave everything. The
Okay,
logo,
fantastic. Yeah,
everything.
it can always be hard to hear, but thank you so much, Daniela. It's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I learned so much just listening to your experiences and listening to the way that you're able to like break this stuff down. Yeah, it just thank you so much. It was really really fun.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you for everything. I mean, your tips and insights on public speaking are always so valuable. So thank you. Thank you for your
Awesome. Well,
time.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad to hear it. And so, yeah, all the best with all the fundraising round, and we'll talk offline about how to connect you to the stuff in Toronto as well.
Of course. Thanks.
All righty, take it easy. Bye.